Is he tired?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello! As most of you have probably heard by now, Keaton, along with his accomplice, Compton J, were arrested robbing a liquor store earlier today on Sunset Boulevard. We are raising money for their bail, so that money that was going to go to the underground, on the ground reporting, now is a bail fund. So go to GoFundMe to bail out Keaton and Jay. I'm kidding, of course. I'm kidding. What it really is Tusker's brought me around to her views of economics, and Keaton's too PMC for that gig, man. He's too PMC. We're gonna. The show's going more red now. That's it. I'm joining the party. I'm learning. She's teaching me the Internationale, but I have no rhythm, so it's not. It's just not playing. It's just not playing. But next time, maybe I'll tambourine a little.
No, guys. Unfortunately, Keaton had a family emergency, and they asked me about an hour ago to help alleviate that. So I'm here just for a little bit until we make the switch over to Rumble and we do kind of the planned interview with the filmmakers.
Yeah, Keaton's Wee One is very sick. He is actually graciously still running the tech in case I run into trouble, but he is going to have to go to the hospital. He's going to be here through the Rumble switchover. We are going to need that Rumble switchover because, as you know, someone's telling me to turn my volume up. Do you all feel that way? I don't think so, right? Right? What do you think, Tusker?
I can hear you fine.
Yeah, all right. Listen, man, we got, Tusker we turned down, and I'm pretty good. You know, as soon as I turn it up, it's too loud. It's too loud. We got to think of our DSA brothers and sisters on things like that. But we are going to be doing now. This was a real theater people kind of a move here, because we talked about canceling the show. We thought about canceling the show, and we said, "God damn it, the show must go on." What kind of theater people are we? So we're going to do it, especially because this took like a month and a half to line up these guests. We have Lisa Sellen Davis coming on, who has one of the biggest substacks on trans issues, Broadview. And we have psychologist Stephanie Wynn, who's a producer on the documentary No Way Back, which has basically been banned everywhere, which is some of what we're going to talk about. We have them coming on, so I said, you know what, man? Show must go on. Like, we plan on doing this show. We're expanding to a fourth stream when I get back from Europe. Things are going to happen. Like, we can't cancel every time something happens. So we're making it happen. Tusker was cool enough to pick up the slack. So,
yep.
Woo!
So, woohoo! Yay for me, not really. Let's go ahead and get into our segments, because we're going to have to make that transition to Rumble so we can be timely for that interview.
All right, cool. So, our first story is about friend of show, Oliver Anthony. You know him. You love him. We've been hearing from everyone in our audience that they're crazy about Oliver Anthony, that particularly his cultural signaling is very appealing to the audience that we have, and they're looking forward to his next track. So he put out a statement because you're getting a lot of pushback on his song. I think it is pretty dishonest pushback, frankly. I think a lot of people have issues with gingers that they don't want to fess up to. I don't think we've gotten past the belief that gingers steal the souls of children. And I think that's where a lot of it is coming from. It's a lot of superstition.
I think most of what's happening at the moment is he's undergoing a lot of intersectionality ginger oppression. That I think is really driving a lot of the narrative around this song.
Well, it's only 6 years that the Catholic Church has allowed gingers to be buried in church ground. So, we're not that far away from the days when they threw them in rivers, right?
Yeah. It felt just like yesterday. But so essentially, from what I feel like happened is it seems like there was kind of an organized from the top effort to kind of try to figure out why this song was popular. I mean, I know that I personally saw a couple of articles from just a variety of news organizations that seem to try to understand where the popular groundswell was coming from. I saw one from The Guardian that was talking about him punching down. And I've seen a couple others, and just randomly being on the internet. There's a whole lot of pushback about what the song represents, and so Mr. Anthony eventually ended up releasing a statement.
All right, so I'm gonna do my best Oliver Anthony here. All right.
God.
Okay. All right. It's been difficult as I browse through the 50,000 plus messages and emails I've received in the last week. The stories that have been shared paint a brutally honest picture: suicide, addiction, unemployment, anxiety and depression, hopelessness, and the list goes on. I'm sitting in such a weird place in my life right now. I never wanted to be a full-time musician, much less sit at the top of the iTunes charts. Draven from Radio WV and I filmed these tunes on my land with the hope that it may hit 300K views. I still don't quite believe what has went on since we uploaded that. It's just strange to me. People in the music industry give me blank stares when I brush off $8 million offers. I don't want 6 tour buses, 15 tractor trailers, and a jet. I don't want to play stadium shows. I don't want to be in the spotlight. I wrote the music I wrote because I was suffering with mental health and depression. These songs have connected with millions of people on such a deep level because they're being sung by someone feeling the words in the very moment they were being sung. No editing, no agent, no bullshit. Just some idiot and his guitar. The style of music that we should have never gotten away from in the first place. He sounds like a monster, Tusker. He's really pushing those right-wing talking points there. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Stereotypical fascist, I think.
You know what I think? I think all the people I see shitting themselves about this song on Twitter, I think they have more credible working class bona fides than he does. I bet they've all done a lot of factory work and a lot of working with their hands, those folks. They really know where it's at, those folks.
For sure.
So that being said, I've never taken the time to tell you who I actually am. Here's a formal introduction. My legal name is Christopher Anthony Lunsford. My grandfather was Oliver Anthony, and Oliver Anthony music is a dedication not only to him, but 1930s Appalachia, where he was born and raised. Dirt floors, 7 kids, hard times. At this point, I'll gladly go by Oliver because everyone knows me as such, but my friends and family still call me Chris. You can decide for yourself. Either is fine. In 2010, I dropped out of high school at age 17. I beat you, motherfucker. Dropped out at 16. I have a GID. It's true. I dropped out when I was 16. I have a GED from Spruce Pine, North Carolina. I worked multiple plant jobs in western North Carolina, my last being at the paper mill in McDowell County. I worked third shift 6 days a week for $14.50 an hour in a living hell. In 2013, I had a bad fall at work and fractured my skull. It forced me to move back home to Virginia. Due to complications from the injury, it took me 6 months or so before I could work again. From 2014 until just a few days ago, I've worked outside sales in the industrial manufacturing world. My job has taken me all over Virginia and into the Carolinas, getting to know tens of thousands of other blue-collar workers on job sites and in factories. I've spent all day, every day for the last 10 years hearing the same story. People are so damn tired of being neglected, divided, and manipulated. Again, what are the attacks about? Why, what is this man saying that people are so hostile and negative towards? And my opinion, when I look at a lot of the negative comments, really have not changed since the first time we covered it. A lot of people who call themselves left, even if they consider themselves not liberal, they're still liberals, man. They still think like liberals. They don't like people like this. They don't feel comfortable with the cultural signaling of these people. And also, a lot of what I see shows in ignorance of history. Because I see a lot of people say, you know, white people didn't care about this until it affected them. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Go read White Trash. Go read What's the Matter with Kansas. Until the Reagan era, these people were the backbone of radical economics. Look at Bleeding Kansas. Look at that history. Look at where these people have traditionally been coming from. These people going in the direction they went in, going kind of right wing and all that, that's the historic aberration. That has not been the norm for that. Now, if you're on the left, this is a welcome. Yeah, some of the stuff in the song, although we'll talk about, he went on and explained that in a separate post, what he meant about the welfare, which we'll talk about a little bit. And as somebody who's actually grew up on welfare, I can speak to that a little. So getting to the end of his statement here. In 2019, I paid $97,500 for the property and still owe about $60,000 on it. I'm living in a 27-foot camper with a tarp on the roof, and I got off Craigslist for $750. There's nothing special about me. I'm not a good musician. I'm not a very good person. I've spent the last 5 years struggling with mental health and using alcohol to drown it. I'm sad to see the world in the state it's in, with everyone fighting with each other. I've spent many nights feeling hopeless that the greatest country on earth is quickly fading away. That being said, I hate the way the internet has divided all of us. The internet is a parasite that infects the minds of humans and has their way with them. Amen, brother. Hours wasted, goals forgotten, loved ones sitting in houses with each other, distracted all day by technology made by the hands of other poor souls in sweatshops in a foreign land. Oh, that doesn't sound very right-wing of him.
How internationalist.
Yeah. When is enough enough? When are we going to fight for what is right again? Millions have died protecting the liberties we have. Freedom of speech is such a precious gift. Never in world history has the world had the freedom it currently does. Don't let them take it away from you. Just like those once wandering in the desert, we have lost our way from God and have let false idols distract us and divide us. It's a damn shame. All right. So I don't really see what's objectionable in what he said there. Can you explain it, Tusker? What's objectionable in that statement?
Well, I don't know if I see anything necessarily objectionable. I mean, obviously, personally, I don't have the same politics as Mr. Anthony. I mean, you know, I doubt that he has my exact same politics. But I think that what he's speaking to is he's speaking to a thread that most citizens feel. And, you know, even if you just look at the comments under his video, you have people from all over the world that feel the same way and are saying, this is a good song. This makes me feel like I'm more connected with people. And I feel like wherever it is that I go, people are feeling the same thing. Like I said the last time, I have a problem with some of the welfare comments that he said, and Keaton had explained it very well. You know, we had this idea that, you know, as long as they were with us on these economic issues, then the other things can be worked on. And that is still how I feel about it. No one is ever going to be with you 100%. Right. On every single issue. You have to work with people on the things that you agree with. And, you know, hopefully through that interaction with each other, then you're able to educate each other, come to a more common place of agreement, and then go forward from there. Is kind of my interpretation of it. What do you think?
Well, you know, Keaton, through the Due Dissidence account, he had an exchange with somebody who was saying, well, what does he mean by the rich people north of Richmond? And Keaton said, well, he actually explained that he's talking about DC, and the guy goes, well, he's not talking about the people who were the slave owners or anything getting their freedom from the people who freed the slave. What the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about? I'm sorry. This is, I haven't pulled this out in a while. This is what I keep thinking when I see the left commentary on this.
I love you, but you are not serious people.
Well,
get serious, man. If you look at a guy like this, and you look at him singing that, and you see all of these people who are nominally conservative or conservative adjacent get animated by this, you know, cry about the economic conditions of people in the country, and you don't see an opportunity, well, you don't have a lot of political depth, and you don't have a lot of political vision. Because let me tell you something, Sunshine. If we are actually going to create meaningful economic change in this country, it's not going to be on the backs of the people who shit themselves over this song. It's going to be on the backs of people who like this song. Those are the people who will actually go and battle against the establishment, not the PMC class, who at the end of the day have too much to risk.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And then also, I think just whenever you were talking about you don't know your history and stuff like that, you can take it back even further than that. You can take it back to W.E.B. Du Bois writing in Black Reconstruction about the poverty and the absolute degradation of Appalachia. You can take it back to John Brown, who was a warrior as a white man that was totally against slavery, and, you know, he waged his struggles. You can take it back to Bacon's Rebellion. There are a lot of different instances in history where people had attempted to put aside their differences and actually come together over economic need. And those things have always been viewed as a threat by the establishment. And I think that that is one of the reasons why you are seeing some of the hysterics from sort of your establishment media, is that they don't really understand how it is that people are reading it. And yes, there are definitely the attacks on the poor, but I don't necessarily know if that's at all what he was exactly.
He addressed that, actually. If we hadn't had the situation we have today, I would have pulled that. But he made a statement about the welfare. And what he said, and I hope I'm not misinterpreting it, because I only got to look at it in between panic about how we were doing this show tonight. But what he said was to the effect, I believe, that he was talking about how people are not given enough opportunity and they wind up on welfare, which puts them in a position of dependency and depression. And they don't really make enough money to eat good food. So they're going to be sitting around eating the fudge rounds. Now, listen, we always keep it honest. We always keep it straight here. When you look at how he framed it within the lyric, and listen, he's playing himself down and all that. I don't mean he's being dishonest, but he's being, a modest country boy there. The fellow can write a lyric. Oh, look at the K-Man back there. Look, even when he's not here, he's here. He's here. He's here in spirit. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Our government likes to throw money at problems without conceptualizing real solutions that connect to the individuals involved. The lyrics contrast that some are left without any and others are only left with the option of living on junk food. Meanwhile, our farming industry has been corporatized and sold out. Food is entirely too expensive, especially in a nation with abundant farmland. In politics, it's all about keeping people who are dependent. Okay. All right. So, there you have it. Go ahead, Tusker.
I was just going to say, I think this is also one of these problems that and kind of one of the ways that I had initially read it, like whenever I drive to my boyfriend's house, he lives in kind of like a primarily white area. Not every, like most people aren't rich out there. There are a couple of neighborhoods that are kind of more affluent. But if you drive out there in all of that kind of sprawling, kind of poorish area, there's a Dollar General. That's the closest grocery store.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are some situations where people are put in the situation of eating unhealthy foods because a long trip to the grocery store is not in the cards for them. They don't have the gas money. They don't have anything like that. We also know about all the things with food deserts, and like this is a common thing. There are many things where poor people, and also guess what? If you're poor, it's hard to keep all those like fresh foods like stocked in your refrigerator that are just going to expire in a couple of days if you can only make that one trip to the grocery store. Right, so there is a reason why people are kind of placed in the situation to be eating unhealthy foods. And what he's talking about there, with the amount of farmland that we have, with the amount of natural resources that us as Americans that we have, the government is not coming up with solutions that alleviate those situations. And that really is the bigger issue, even though the lyric was not written as well as it could have been.
Yeah, like that's what I mean. I'm going to keep it straight. I don't feel like the lyric communicates that. Like, no. I don't feel like people are out of line to interpret that as a slap at people on welfare. It definitely plays that way. I think people are dishonestly interpreting a lot of other parts of the song. I don't feel like their interpretation of that is incorrect. I think that they're taking it and ignoring everything else in the song that represents such an opportunity to open up a conversation. And you can debate about that. Now, I've said this before on the show in other contexts, saying there's a certain strain of Black conservatism that is skeptical of welfare as an instrument of dependency, as something that in the end weakens the community. I've never talked about it in this context, or it's never really come up, but same applies. Look, I grew up on welfare with a single mom, and I can tell you it's damaging. And I didn't grow up in a community that had it. I grew up in a household that had it. And when I came of age, I had to go get a job. It was very difficult for me. I went when I wanted to work. I was like an ambitious kid. And my mother told me I couldn't because she might lose welfare if it showed up that I was working. So what does that do to a whole population when you got them having to work? You know, you're a teenager, you're shy. So you don't want to go ask for off the books work. You just wind up not working. This is something, unless you've grown up on welfare, you just wouldn't even think of something like that. You wouldn't even know about it. I saw the effect that had on me. And frankly, because I came from a community where it would not have been acceptable for me to grow up and go on welfare, I had to figure it out. And it was very hard. It was very difficult. Now, what if I had been surrounded by people who have been encouraged to be on welfare, which is how a lot of conservatives see it, who feel that it's damaging to the community? Just from my own personal experience, I will tell you, that's not just a bullshit conservative talking point. There's something to that it's not the best thing to encourage poor people to be dependent on welfare. Now, I know that people are going to say, what about moms who have to stay home with their kids? And yeah, there's a lot of complications. I'm not saying that. I'm sensitive to that. Obviously, I grew up that way myself. But I am telling you that if you don't have the experience of welfare in your life or in your community, it does create problems and dysfunctions that you're probably not aware of. So the kind of observation he's making there, a lot of people might say, well, that's conservative. I don't read that as conservative. I read that as reality.
Yeah, I mean, I think the same. And let's just try to put a button on this and then move to the next issue. But I really do think that this is one of those conversations that the reason why there is such a like polarized view of it is that it is a conversation that actually does require some amount of nuance as to how it is that we want to structure those systems in a way that makes sense for the majority of the population, and so that we don't have those real, like, tragic, like, kind of maybe more outlier cases where people really would fall through the cracks. So there has to be a certain way that we structure welfare that keeps those people from falling through the cracks to where they're legitimately getting the help and care that they need, and also recognizing some of the other elements that come into it, and maybe some of the glut. And what I would say is a lot of government mismanagement and not thinking things through. They want to get something passed through on paper, means testing, all kinds of nonsense. It's just kind of like what you're talking about with, like, the work laws. You have someone that, you know, works 15 hours a week, and then that puts them over the edge of disability, so then they lose their like, there are just so many things here that are a problem. And if we had more democratic institutions to where people had more of a say-so in how they wanted those systems structured, I think we'd see a humongous improvement in our welfare system as a whole. But until we have that democratic ability to help our government structure systems that actually work for the vast majority of people, it's not going to happen. Right now, they're sitting there taking lobbying money and writing whatever the hell they want.
Well, that's it. And that's part of what he said there, that if we had a better system, you wouldn't have all these people living on welfare and that kind of despair, eating fudge rounds. And I think that's something we can all agree on, right? So that's Keaton's subtle hint to move on. He, like, texted me 3 times, like, oh, okay, after this point. All right, so Patrick Donahue. Oliver Anthony struck a chord. Just a real shame he punched down and targeted people on welfare rather than the real welfare queens, corporations. But I'd love to see people like DD engage with him. Yeah, I think, we're all in agreement there.
All in agreement.
Right,
and
what else we got?
Midwestern Marx is going to interview him.
Oh, right. Yeah. I saw that.
I can't remember the date, but they're going to.
Okay, so from Courtney, money because I get to look at Tusker's lovely face instead of Keaton's. That's what I said when he said he was going to bow out. Well wishes to his kid. All right, he hears you. He's in the studio. Honored member, Tusker. Russell, be kind, maybe. Yeah, I'm always kind. I can't believe that didn't get a laugh out of Tusker. OD. Emma Vigeland thinks the line "rich men north of Richmond" is some kind of Confederate code language. Yeah, please help her. Yeah, we're hearing that from a lot of people, and he explained in another. I think he explained it in a tweet what he meant by that. He's talking about Washington, and he specifically said, "I have nothing against people from up north." So yeah, it's bullshit. Yeah. All right. And okay, next segment. All right. My producer tells me to move on. All right, so Barbie. Are you waiting for my take on Barbie? I'm gonna really surprise everybody. I liked it. I thought it was good. I hit a Tusker, can't believe her ears. I thought it was good. I went in with an open mind, and to be fair, and I said before I even saw it, when you look at a lot of the Sturm and Drang around certain other properties, like that are considered to have gone woke, right? Like the Star Wars franchise or the Marvel movies, where geek nerds very upset about the direction they've taken it in. Well, part of that, or maybe most of it, is that no matter what article you want to write about this, girls aren't into that shit. Okay, they're not. There are exceptions. I've known many of them, but generally those are boy brands. If you look at the numbers, the people, even if it's a female superhero, even if it's an iconic female superhero like Wonder Woman, most of the audience is male. So when they not only took things in this direction, but when they took it, it's not about having female-led projects or that kind of thing. It's that it was overrun by people with a very shallow understanding of gender politics who inserted these very obnoxious, man-hating kind of themes and messages and tone into these things. And, you know, so when Barbie opened, and, you know, some people had negative things to say about it, some people had positive things, I said, look, even if I do go see it and think it's this uber fourth wave feminist movie, that is a good case of not everything has to be for everybody. It's fucking Barbie. If there was ever a girl brand, it's Barbie. Like, why is Ben Shapiro getting pissed that a Barbie movie doesn't speak to him? It's not fucking for you, man. Like, why? That is a case. However, on the other side, this gives us a great opportunity to explain to women who defend some of these changes in other franchises, okay, so how would you feel if they gave the Barbie movie to Martin Scorsese? How would you feel about it? How would you feel if it were, you know, this Martin Scorsese interpretation of Barbie? Would you feel like that honored the fans of that franchise? So that's what they've done to a lot of these franchises that men feel like you took away their shit, right? You gave these properties to people who clearly hated them and hated the fan base, right? So now Barbie, I think no matter what, I would have felt like they, you know, I mean, they didn't make that for me. It's fine, whether I liked it or didn't like it. It just so happens that I actually did like it.
Well, what did you like about it?
Okay. I thought it very effectively. I came out, the first thing I said was, you know, I'm not so much anti-woke as I'm anti-stupid. Like, I'm not against feminist themes. I'm not against presenting the idea that women are in a very weird position in the world and in society. Like, for people who had an issue with the movie, what exactly is your issue? Do you feel that that's not true? Like, what are you getting at? Like, I'm not somebody this is why I'm on the left. This is why I'm not on the right. I don't believe that. You have a lot of people on the right who will say, well, that might have been true at one time, but women actually they have better opportunities. All right, motherfucker. Look around at the world. Show me all the female CEOs. Show me all the women in politics. Show me all the women in charge. Okay, so I thought this movie very effectively did kind of what Planet of the Apes did. It Planet of the Apes made you see what it would look like if you were the oppressed, right? And of course, there was a big metaphor in that. This brought you into that mindset of what thing I can say as a man watching it. And I've thought of this before. It's not the first time this has occurred to me, how weird the world would look if you were a woman, right? Because she comes from this Barbie land where the women are all in charge. And then she goes to the real world and everything is inverted, right? However, and this is what makes the difference between a woke movie, to me, or what I would define as obnoxiously woke, and a smart movie with a feminist perspective. The movie was very self-aware and it had a sense of humor about itself, right? I didn't feel like it was trying to lecture anybody. I felt like the movie didn't hate men. I felt like it had a pretty balanced perspective on that, particularly, I don't want to give any spoilers, but particularly the way that it wraps up. It shows a lot of compassion for the issues that men face with their gender roles, and it kind of winds up in a place of like, hey, we as a society can't go back to where we were. The trad wife, the 50s thing, you're never going to be able to reestablish that, even if that were a desirable thing to do. But basically the point of view of the movie, I felt, was how do we move forward together into something different from what we had before, where we have respect for each other and don't have such strictly defined gender roles, and maybe are able to find a new way to move forward as men, women, and non-binary, whatever. Like let's figure. And the movie doesn't really tell you how to do that or how that should be done. I didn't feel like it was a hateful movie. I didn't feel like it hated anybody. I didn't feel like it hated men. I didn't even feel like it was really fourth wave feminist per se, or at least not in the most negative connotations of that. I felt like in some respects it poked fun at some of the assumptions and contradictions in that. So look, it was a smart movie. It was very self-aware. And I feel like if you went to see this and you had a problem with it, I don't know, maybe you just have a problem with the idea that women don't have equality. Like, I don't see what else would trigger you about the movie, because it definitely was rooted in that assumption. But they don't. The last thing I'll say is, yes, we know that more women are going to college now than men, and that's something conservatives will point out a lot. So maybe in the next generation, it will be women are at the forefront of society. But it's not like that now. And anybody who says it is, I mean, open your eyes. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I guess because in audience, I haven't seen it. This was one of the things that we struggled with because you were promised the Barbie, review, and Keaton is unfortunately not here. So I have not seen the movie. I've seen a couple of reviews of it. I guess one of the things that I would want to know is, Barbie is obviously an icon for not usually teenage girls, usually an icon for younger aged girls.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that the critique that it's not age appropriate for those girls is an issue?
Okay, so I was watching it with an eye to that as well. I felt like the adult jokes in it, for one thing, they were pretty far and few between. It was not nearly as much as you would get the impression from like Crystal Ball going all Karen about this fucking movie, which now that I've seen it, I really don't get where she was coming from on it. Because that was one of her main critiques, that it wasn't for children. Where the jokes were adult, I felt like they were adult the way the classic Warner Brothers cartoons were adult, where you watch it as an adult and you catch things you didn't catch as a child.
It was obscured enough. It was obscured enough to where, you as an adult would pick up on it, but not a child.
I felt like most of it. I mean, at one point she says, I'm going to see a gynecologist. I mean, that's rather puritanical to be like, I don't want children to hear the word gynecologist. Oh my God, it's not like they had a gynecological exam in the movie, right? So like that.
Well, an 8-year-old doesn't know what a gynecologist is.
Well, that too. And then there was kind of a joke where they say they're going to have a beach off, and of course it sounds like beat off, but a kid's not going to catch that. They're going to catch it when they watch it again when they're 13. They're not going to catch now that it was a double entendre. Honestly, those were the only two things in the movie that I thought were really like adult. Like where an adult might say, I don't want my kid to see that. But honestly, I think you'd have to be a pretty uptight adult. Like I wouldn't feel like this is inappropriate for my daughter, because I felt like anything that was at that level, they wouldn't get anyway.
Well, maybe I'll actually have to see this stupid movie. I still haven't seen Oppenheimer either. It's just not one of those things that I do. But
I'm gonna try to see that before I leave. I leave 2 weeks from tomorrow. All right, so this is Keaton with this is what we used to call in the old neighborhood a hint and a half for your ass. Keaton's giving a hint and a half to our ass. I used to buy this is Virtuoso, by the way. I used to buy hot prepared meals at Whole Foods with SNAP benefits by selecting it as a salad bar purchase. The SNAP program limits your food choices. Yeah, but you can still buy like cakes and sodas and things like that, I believe. I don't think it limits you to that point. And look, man, I mean, I haven't brought this up when this has come up, but the fish store on 125th, when I used to go in there, I haven't for a while. You used to have people who would like buy your fish at a discount for the cash and then use their SNAP card. So those things do happen. I'm not saying it's the majority, but it happens. Female rage. How did you feel about Barbie? Female rage. Disability benefits alone often aren't enough to subsist on, but if you earn too much, you're not disabled enough to continue getting those benefits. Well, that was the situation when I was growing up. My mother was disabled, and the welfare was for me. The disability was for her, and they gave her the welfare for me, but then I couldn't work on the books, or she was under the impression I couldn't. Who knows? Courtney, I am disabled and on food stamps. I never buy junk. I don't want people who can work and are not disabled scamming, and I don't think people should spend it on junk. Welfare fraud is out of control. I don't know if it's out of control. I'll say it exists. I've seen it with my own eyes. But is it out of it? And, I spoke at length. I think there are legitimate critiques of what welfare can do, not only to a family, but to a community when you get an entire community dependent on government assistance. I don't think those conservative critiques of welfare, as somebody who grew up on it, are completely out of line.
And once again, the people that have designed these programs are all technocratic, professional managerial class elites that are not connected to the ground and really don't address the issues of the working class. And that might be a reason why some working class people have a critique of it.
Right. I am a huge Tolkien fan since childhood. I refuse to watch woke Amazon version. Don't change the story for wokeness or any other stupid reason. Yeah, I mean, I watched, I think I got through the first episode, and it was just so poorly done. It was just so bad. And, the numbers reflect that. I think by the end of the run, about 90% of people who started with the first episode, based on their internal numbers, didn't make it to the final episode.
I know I was really mad when they debuted Redheaded Elves. I remember that. I was like,
well, I mean, Eric, I'll give you a little more there, but I could geek out on this all night. Something that the critical drinker will often bring up about this casting, and Nerdrotic, he talks about this too. Why do all these fantasy worlds have to look like the population of Los Angeles? Like it gives you no sense of place, right? Shouldn't the elves look a certain way? The dwarves look a certain way? It's not, they handled that very well on Game of Thrones with a diverse cast. It's not saying all the cast has to be white, but in the world we live in, I was just in India. They didn't look like people look in Europe. Right? I mean, people look different in different places. So when you take these fantasy worlds and you just decide everyone has to look like the people you would see in downtown Los Angeles, well, it ruins a lot of the verisimilitude of the world that you're trying to build. So
I think a lot of it, honestly, coming at it from just a nerd perspective, I think a lot of it is just, I mean, I've known plenty of nerds. I am a nerd myself, but like having people, they want to paint the models to scale and they want to make it as realistic to the thing. I think that that's really what a lot of the clash was about. You had nerds that wanted everything to scale at the exact way that they had interpreted it, and it's just clashing with their anxiety about wanting things to be canon.
I mean, I think when you're doing these very cherished stories, you should stick close to canon. You should. I mean, those are your fans, right? I mean, those are the people who are most devoted to that. It doesn't mean that you can't have diversity. Like I said, Game of Thrones, they did it. This is what tells me, because a lot of people will claim these complaints are racist. And you know what? If I saw these people go off on House of the Dragon, which was very good, I'd say, yeah, it is. House of the Dragon was good, and all the same people who complained about Lord of the Rings were like, House of Dragon was really good. I really enjoyed it. So it's not about that. It's about, what it's really about is using the buzzwords diversity to cover up for your lack of talent, to cover up for the fact that you made a bad product. And then when people complain about it, you call them racist, right? You call them sexist.
Reason why Kamala Harris is vice president.
Yeah, that is a good example. Basically, Hollywood is being run by a lot of Kamala Harrises. All right, so moving on to our next segment, right? K-Man? Is that what we're doing? Is he still back there? Did he quit?
He rage quit.
I'll
Quit
just,
over all this.
who could blame him? All right, so Mr. Assange goes to Sydney, or maybe at a near point in the future. The United States is considering a plea deal that would allow WikiLeaks founder and whistleblower Julian Assange to return to Australia, the Sydney Morning Herald reported Monday. U.S. Ambassador to Australia Carolyn Kennedy, who is a firm believer in vaccination, told the Morning Herald that there could be a resolution to Assange's now 4-year detention in Britain. Assange, an Australian citizen, has been held in London prison since 2019 while combating U.S. extradition efforts. He faces 18 criminal charges in the U.S., 17 of which allege violations of the Espionage Act. Kennedy's comments come weeks after U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken rebuffed Australia's calls to end the prosecution against Assange. After a July meeting with Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong in Brisbane, Blinken said the whistleblower was charged with very serious criminal conduct for his role in publishing classified American government materials. The files Assange shared in 2010 included footage of a U.S. airstrike in Baghdad that killed 18 civilians, including journalists, and hundreds of thousands of field reports from the Iraq War. So I think that's enough. So apparently that is from The Intercept. Thank you, Keaton. And by the way, let me mention, we're going to be switching over to Rumble very soon because we're going to be talking about the film No Way Back, which, YouTube actually just expanded its censorship of medical. So we got to do that over there where we can really have an honest conversation. So be ready for the switch. It looks like I've seen follow-up articles on this. It looks like there is a pretty decent chance that Joe Biden, because he doesn't want to be embarrassed by having this issue hanging out there during the election season, they seem to feel that it's giving them a black eye. And also because of the diplomatic issues it's raising with Australia, there was a bipartisan is here, but members of different parties got together in Australia and protested Assange still being detained, said, he didn't break any laws. So because of the diplomatic and the domestic political element, it looks like they're probably gonna let him go. At least that's the word on the street.
Even after seeing it, and I haven't kept up on some of the Assange stuff. Sorry, Misty. I haven't kept up on some of that, but I have a really, really hard time thinking that this is actually going to result in his freedom. I don't see any way that the U.S. security state is going to let this guy walk. I hope I am wrong. He certainly deserves to be free, but talking about the domestic issues that it has for Australia, okay, what about the domestic issues for Nord Stream and Germany? When has the United States ever cared about its neo-colonies? It never has.
Right.
These are vassal states, and it doesn't care. And Julian Assange gave the imperial hegemon a black eye. And it still hurts them, and they hate it. And I just don't see them letting him go. I really desperately hope that I'm wrong about that, but it's just one of those things where I'm not willing to hold my breath for it.
From many years of watching the way that they float trial balloons to the press when they're about to do something, that is why I think that for whatever reason, they might do it. Because this reads to me like they put it out there. They put it out there intentionally to kind of gauge the reactions and to prepare people for it, and maybe even to send a signal to the Aussies that they're gonna help them out. I mean, married to an Australian, and the Australians, the actual people of Australia find it humiliating that their government is a lapdog to the United States. Like, basically, they do whatever we tell them to do. Could be they decide to throw the dog a bone by giving them Assange, on the condition that if he goes back to his old ways, this guy, you got a lot of sharks out there. It wouldn't be too hard to have him go swim and not come back, right? So we let him go, and if he pulls anything, maybe he takes a swim, huh?
Right, but we shouldn't have any control over him anyway. He's the Espionage Act. He's not a United States citizen.
Well, sure.
And we're still going to flex our power over that. Like, to me, it just seemed. I mean, and I hear you. I hear what you're saying about them kind of trying to throw some things out there, see how people are going to take it, and maybe then they can figure out a way forward through there. I get that. You hear that all the time, and you can see that with the Ukraine war going on. They always do this. They always test out these narratives for a little while to kind of re-propagandize the population into this is acceptable now. So maybe that is what they're doing. Maybe they are planning to make a change on Julian Assange, and they're trying to basically set all the rabid imperial dogs back a little bit, because if they just made a fast announcement, you'd have Guardian articles and the Atlantic articles and all the people coming out there and being like, oh no, we still simp for the security state, but
right.
You're giving them maybe an indication that you can lay off it a little bit. I really, really hope so, but I just don't feel like it's anything for people to get too excited about just yet. I'd like to see more.
I think they might feel. Yes, I agree. No, nobody should be making welcome home signs for Julian at this point. But the fact that they floated this in the press, it is a black eye for them. You do have the international press kind of protesting this, saying, if they can arrest somebody for a crime that they claim they committed, who is not a U.S. citizen, who did not commit the crime they claim he committed, even within the borders of the United States, who can they not arrest, right? So they might just throw this bone for diplomatic reasons. I could see it happen. All right, K-Man, are we doing any super chats?
Nope. We have our guests here. Lisa is logging on right now. By the way, folks, you're hearing me in the booth. Thank you very much for the well wishes for my little boy. He's doing okay. It was a situation where urgent care told us last night that it may be appendicitis. It may not be. They couldn't tell. They let us go home because they figured we could monitor him here just as well as they could monitor him there. But they did say if he gets worse, bring him back. And it looked for a while like he might be getting worse. Now he's doing better. But I was obviously in no place to do content this evening. So that's why I hung back here and was in and out. But thank you, Russell and Tusker, so much for stepping up. And thank you guys all for being here. And thank you for the well wishes. So yeah, we are ready to introduce our guests and then switch over to Rumble. So Russell, why don't you go ahead and give the introduction?
All right, do me a favor. While I'm doing that, just clean up all those exhibits so the only stuff that's in there is what I'm using.
Sounds good.
Thank you, sir. All right, so we have been trying to set up this interview for over a month. I am very, very excited to interview our next guests. We are going to be talking about the film No Way Back, which I will ask them about this, but I think it has been banned everywhere, banned in all the fine cinemas. So our guests are Lisa Sellen Davis. She does the Broadview Substack, which I've been following for quite a long time, one of the best Substacks about transgender issues out there. She's also the author of Tomboy, and her articles have appeared in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, The Guardian, CNN, and many, many more. Every place that fine articles of journalism are sold. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And our other guest is Stephanie Wynn. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist based in Portland, Oregon, which I'm assuming is a really tough place to take this kind of a position on these issues. She is the host of Some Kind of Therapist podcast, and she's an associate producer on the film No Way Back. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm glad we were finally able to make this happen.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, Lisa, we were going to meet up because you're here in New York, and AMC was going to screen No Way Back, and it wound up not happening. So what happened to that screening?
I don't know the behind the scenes. I mean, I think the simple answer is some activists objected to it as hate speech, and AMC caved, which is interesting because someone up high had agreed, right, Stephanie? Someone had agreed to open the film nationwide in theaters, and there had been money raised to do that. So I'm not sure we know the specifics of who complained and who caved, but
yeah, we had made it through every stage of their security verification process, and it was all good to go, but it's kind of predictable what happened. And we honestly don't blame AMC for caving under the pressure. The pressure was put on by trans rights activists, organized by a group called the QT Project. So we hold them responsible, and I'm sure they'd love to hear that. They're celebrating the win, but that's the only tool they have at their disposal. If their ideas could stand up to scrutiny, then why can't they allow people to hear what we have to say? Wouldn't it be more easily debunked? Couldn't they provide information that countered the claims made in the film? But all they could do is silence us under the guise of hate speech.
Well, that's what really strikes me always with this. If you're so confident, if all of the information out there, all of the studies so much support this position, it's crazy to question it. Well, thank you, Keith. I was hearing myself. If it's such an easy thing to disprove your opponents, why do you have to censor everybody? That's always it's never the last resort, it's the first resort. And that's what seems to have happened with this film. Now, Stephanie, you're an associate producer on it. You're a rare therapist willing to speak out on this. And at the end of the movie, I thought it was very interesting. Now, Lisa, you're here in New York, but I guess everyone else was West Coast, because there's a title card at the end listing everyone involved in this, which says lifelong West Coast liberal Democrats. So there's this impression that everyone speaking out against this is Matt Walsh,
right?
Who, we'll get into that. I very often talk about this on the show. For people on the left, we're living in upside down, topsy-turvy land where Matt Walsh, who reads to me like a character on A Handmaid's Tale, is one of the few people speaking out on this. And meanwhile, the people on the left are not only silent, but pushing it. So, Stephanie, how did a West Coast liberal Democrat wind up involved in this movie?
Well, this film was made first and foremost by parents, and I'm so honored that they've given me the privilege of representing the film to the public. But there are some very hardworking people behind the scenes who have families to look after, and parents are dealing with this issue all over the country. It's not a liberal versus conservative issue. It's not a West Coast versus East Coast versus rural parts of the country issue. And of course, people here in Oregon, Washington, California, my West Coast peers, we're all seeing this big time. And so our film approaches things from a liberal perspective, which Lisa obviously does in her work and her writing as well, because we support individual freedom of expression. We don't believe that there's a right or wrong way to be a man or a woman, or that there's anything wrong with diversity of sexual orientation. So that's part of why the film is so dangerous to those activists, because their silencing rests on the idea that this is about being narrow-minded or having a bias against people just living their lives or being true to themselves. We support people living their lives and being true to themselves as long as they're not hurting themselves or others, but this ideology is very destructive to both self and others and relationships.
Am I right that it's not showing anywhere? Because I couldn't find any platform other than the Deplorable Film website that's showing.
Well, actually, you can stream our film right now, or you can order a DVD. And right now, the place to go is our website. So it's at nowaybackfilm.com. You can stream or order a DVD. You can use my promo code for 20% off. It's Some Therapist, which is also my handle everywhere. And Deplorable Films is working on getting it on various sort of major platforms where people like to stream. I can't commit to any particular platform or when we'll be on there, but you can find the film online right now.
Okay, so that's where you find it, at deplorablefilms.com?
At nowaybackfilm.com.
Nowaybackfilm.com. Okay, so we are going to leave East Berlin, and we are going to go to West Berlin, and we are going to speak freely about this film. So you are all going over, if you're not there already, going to rumble.com/do-dissidents. Let's climb that wall, scale the barbed wire, and go breathe the sweet air of freedom. And all wish Keaton's child a quick recovery.
Thank you very much, everybody. All right. Everybody, stay where you are in the studio. If you're here watching the show, like I said, we're on Rumble, Rockfin, and we're streaming on Twitter as well, starting in a couple minutes.
Please clap.